Hey, friends, welcome back to the Listen for Real podcast. I'm Jennifer Brown, and I am so happy that you are here and in this conversation with me, even if we are not in the same room, even if we are not talking back and forth in a typical dialogue. I believe this is an ongoing conversation, and I'm grateful you're in it with me. I'm doing something a little different for this episode, but it is near and dear to my heart. And I was thinking about, as we're going into the holidays, how important and powerful story is. We're getting together with people, hopefully, God willing, that you're all getting together with different people. Some of them are new. Some of them maybe you've never met. Some maybe old, familiar family members and friends. But the bottom line is there's typically an exchange of stories in all of these settings. Some are new, some are rehashed old stories, some are triggering, some are funny as heck, but they're all really important. And they are the way we truly connect. And so I wanted to share something that would, I hope, inspire you to listen more deeply to the stories around you and also share your stories a little more readily. One of the ways, obviously, I expand my paradigm is by talking to others and hearing their stories. That's what we do here on this podcast. But I also do that through reading books, through listening to other podcasts. I am constantly seeking and just craving the voice of another person and hearing what their story is or what they have to share. And I was on vacation last week and read Tarana Burke's amazing book, Unbound. Came out earlier this year, I believe. And she is an activist, advocate, and just talented author of this book. It's pretty much a memoir, and then another one as well that she co-authored with Brene Brown. But it really struck me. And I had talked about Tarana Burke and her story a couple months ago in a talk I gave in another venue. And it just feels right to share a little bit more about what I shared at that time with all of you. So with that, I want to spend a few minutes giving you my heart around story and the power of our stories to change humanity and inspire you to bring more of your story to this holiday season, but especially into this new year. As you go into 2022, it is my hope that you will listen deeply to the stories around you, but also tell yours. So with that, I want to share a little story. Some of it's personal and some of it is about many other people. And of course, Tarana Burke. And again, her book. All right. Here's what I want to share. And this was from a talk I gave a few months ago. And it's this, that our stories change humanity. Our stories are potent and they change narratives and transform mindsets. They break silence and shame. Stories set people free, and in some cases, they call others to account. Most importantly, when our stories are told, they set other testimonies into motion. They offer permission and invitation. So let me tell you a story about Tarana Burke. In 2006, Tarana worked tirelessly supporting the needs of young women of color. As a mentor at a youth camp, she routinely let the girls know that she was available to them, that they could come to her at any point for any need. And one day she was approached by a girl named Heaven, who bravely divulged her story of repeated sexual abuse. Surprisingly, Tarana felt overwhelmed and completely impotent to provide the love and support this girl needed. So much so that she actually stopped her mid-testimony and directed her to another counselor who might be able to help her better. As that girl walked away, stuffing her story back inside, Tarana felt the source of her impotence. And she chronicles this to great detail in her book. The source of her impotence was that shame of an inner voice saying, "Me too." You see, Tarana herself was raped when she was a child, and that piece of her history remained bound within her, untold. So Tarana went on to create the Me Too organization back in 2006 to support survivors of sexual violence. That way, when someone did courageously bring voice to the unthinkable, she and her organization would meet them in their need. Indeed, remember what I said earlier? Stories break silence and shame. Now, fast forward to 2017, in response to accusations made against Harvey Weinstein, actors began to share publicly their own invisible stories of sexual abuse, adopting the hashtag of Me Too. It went viral, prompting millions of people, perhaps many of you, worldwide, to out their own accounts of sexual abuse, along with many of its perpetrators. The Me Too movement unleashed a century's worth of empowered stories. Indeed, stories call others to account, don't they? And yes, think about it. If you look at Me Too, they do set other testimonies into motion. So let me ask you, what if heaven never entrusted her pain with Tarana? What if Tarana refused to give voice to her own lived experience as a 7-year-old? It is impossible in my mind to estimate the catalytic power that one story holds. And this is why I advocate here on this podcast and in my work and in my with my clients on TEDx stages, wherever I can possibly do it. I advocate giving voice to our stories as a means of changing humanity, because I believe every human being wants to be seen, heard, known, and valued. And stories make that possible. They provide the connection we crave. They're a collective language. I mean, if you think about it, it's a quality that separates us from every other living human being. We all have stories and tales to tell. So let me tell you one of mine. And I've alluded to this many times because it was a very profound experience for me this year, but it's lent to me learning and understanding something really big about myself. This life, this person that you hear right now in Jen is made up of 3 essential parts: a physical body, a mind that reasons, and a soul who loves. But for most of my life, my mind has run a totalitarian regime. My soul and body were ignored until one day they came to my rescue in May of this year when I nearly drowned in the waters near Maui. And I talk about it a lot because it is so unbelievably powerful in creating that big shift in my life. I remember the feeling of panic and not being able to breathe, the urge to signal for help, and that recognition that there was no time. I remember my soul cried out, "God, help me, God, help me." It was like this constricted voice in my mask. My soul cried repeatedly as my body struggled to carry us towards shore. My arms and legs grabbed at the coral. Y'all, I was in 6 feet of water. That's what's so crazy that this could have happened. But I grabbed at the coral and I'm pulling myself in, and my soul, where my God lives, showed up unyielding. And these two, my body and soul, carried me to safety, proving themselves reliable, trustworthy, and indispensable. And my mind, in all of its logic and intellect, could not save me that morning. In the days after this incident, I became acutely aware that my gasping for air that day in Maui was a metaphor. I had no room to breathe in this so-called fulfilled life I'd created. Truly, picture the word fulfilled. My mind had convinced me that fulfilling meant a calendar full and filled with relationships and meaningful work, perfect parenting, and an ever increasing to do list, just boxes all around me demanding to be checked. She meant well, my mind, when I say she, but she also dominated the conversation. Let me explain how that looks. My soul would express its yearning, let's say, for a partner, someone to navigate life's dance with. And then my mind would take over, creating a hasty action plan for attaining the husband and marriage that would check all of the socially approved boxes. I've done that not once, but I've done it twice. Then my body would issue visceral red flag warnings, and my mind would dismiss them with new commands, disregard and numb, sending me back to the reliable patterns that I clung to. I was suffocating, and this experience in May reminded me that there is an exquisite check and balance to who we are, y'all. Our body, our mind, and our soul work in concert to create a fulfilling existence. No longer would I allow one aspect of me to bully the other two into quiet submission. Indeed, our stories change narratives and transform mindsets, sometimes even our own. So as I think of my own lived experience and that of Tarana Burke that I referenced earlier, and the pain and the joy, learning and inner knowing that our stories reveal, I find myself asking what gets in the way, what keeps our real stories cloaked in silence. And two things come to mind. The first, I want to ask, is it possible that many of us have become purveyors and consumers of manufactured storylines? Because if you think about it, we live in a culture where the art and honesty of a truly relational exchange is frequently replaced with that perfectly curated story. You know, the one, and I'm guilty of this too, we routinely add to our social media profiles as one example. Or maybe it's the holiday cards we just sent out to everybody on our mailing list. They're edited, polished, even embellished. And then we're validated for that rendition of our lives. I mean, picture we accept the counterfeit of rapid fire likes or a flurry of hearts across our screen, all derived from the flippant click of someone's button. Or we drink in flattering responses to something that may not have been all that authentic in the first place. How can that do anything but insidiously chip away at the true acceptance we all crave? And then I think about a second subtle barrier to sharing ourselves and changing humanity. I believe it's natural to feel guarded when it comes to anything revelatory. I mean, exposure feels raw and edgy, right? Many, in fact, fear that the vulnerability of sharing their story will destroy them. Tarana Burke did not speak of the sexual abuse perpetrated against her for 40 years. She, like many, had reasons for leaving that story unopened. But here's the thing. I believe we all languish when stories remain hidden or bridled. An honest admission actually benefits both the speaker and the listener. Stay with me here. Think about this. As the speaker, when you share your story, you undergo the catharsis of divulging something that was once buried. Unearthing our inner world delivers a satisfaction or a pride that comes with feeling acknowledged. In my case, speaking my experience has allowed me to actually recognize the parts of myself that had been muted. And then to realize another woman or man or person resonated and found themselves in my story, that's gift beyond measure. And then as the listener, when we listen to another person share their story, we gain an opportunity to understand others more deeply, creating compassion, empathy, and a fuller wisdom. That is the whole point of this podcast, the Listen for Real, to listen for real to other people. Story forges a bond between our hearts and minds. And the solution I want to offer you all is this. If it is indeed the case that we long to be seen, heard, known, and valued, and that we all have stories to tell, then we need to become more proficient at sharing our lived experience and listening deeply to others. This can change the world. And that may be an audacious, bold claim, but I'm making it. Envision with me a child, a marriage, a neighborhood, our schools, companies, heads of state, even. How would the world look if all of those people felt authentically seen and valued? How would they show up? What if we all got more comfortable telling our stories and listening thoughtfully to those around us? Because here's the thing, we can all attest to the fallout that occurs when people feel invisible, silenced, or marginalized. Things can get very ugly. Picture the teenage girl who eviscerates herself, offering her body in pieces to a boy because she wants to feel known and valued. Imagine the middle-aged man who takes a gun into public and shoots to kill. He wants to make a statement and finally feel heard. Or call to mind the power structures who silence stories to foster greater oppression. We all hold the power to change these things. Humanity is an anthology, a collection of our stories. And I encourage you all to find your place in the storybook of humanity. And that starts with noticing, owning, and perhaps whispering your truth. And it's being emboldened as you listen carefully to others, acknowledging their equal place in the anthology. What story lives inside you, untold? How will you express it? Is it through a quiet conversation with a friend or maybe a stranger? Is it from a microphone? Is it in the form of written word or an artistic outlet? How will your story change humanity? We'll be right back. And I am back. Yes, it's just me today, but I really thank you for just sitting in this with me and endeavoring to expand your mindset a little bit, trusting me and giving me even a few minutes of your precious time each week and listening to what I deem is important. That's big. I mean, honestly, it's a huge honor. And I take that very seriously as I look into the next year and the guests I want to bring into this forum and the conversations I want to have with you all and with others. It's so magical and important and good and delicious. I mean, it's all these things. And I just encourage you to connect and to communicate and to get super curious, whether it's with yourself. So I just talked about the fact that my soul and my body haven't really been given voice. My mind has pretty much dominated the conversation for most of my adult life. And I'm just now age 50, y'all. 50. I'm learning that my body has a lot of wisdom in it, and my soul has some beautiful things to say. And I'm trying to listen more deeply to them. And it's like this board of three. My God, who lives in my soul, my body, my mind, all have important input and say when it comes to my story, my life, my decisions. And so I really encourage you all, as you think about what story is your body telling? What story is your soul telling? What story is your mind telling? Are they congruent? Are they matching up? Are they different? Or do they all inform that overall story that's yours? I really want to hear more from you all. And maybe you're listening to this and you're going, yeah, I want to talk about my story, or I have a story I want to share. And I hope you'll reach out to me. If I can be an encouragement, if I can be a resource. I mean, this is what I do. This is what I love about my work, is that I have the gift of helping another person bring their ideas and their stories into the world. Casey Baker, one of my mentors and business coaches, calls it you are like a midwife. You help midwife somebody's story or their talk or their idea and help them give it voice. And I love that image, actually, of giving birth to something beautiful that once given voice, it's out in the world and other people can benefit from it. So with that, I want to tell you how much I love and appreciate each of you, your part in my life, your stories. I picture so many of you who I know are listening, and the stories that you've told and the stories you'll probably continue to tell, I hope. And they've affected me and they've grown me and changed me and shifted me. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for all of you. So I will see you next week. We have some amazing episodes to wrap up 2022, and then we are barreling straight. Wrap up 2022? Nope. Boy, that was a jump. To wrap up 21 and to head into 22, there's some really important people that you need to hear from. Really important topics. And I can't wait to share these amazing humans with you, to listen deeply to them. And I look forward to connecting with all of you very soon. See you next week. Listen for Real is produced in Rocklin, California, and is edited and mixed with the help of Marky B. Our music, entitled Zero, is created and performed by the amazing Shannon Curtis. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and we will see you next time.